Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. My name is Rebecca Toomey, and I am here with my lovely co host, Rachel Smith.
Hey guys.
We are on a mission to encourage and inspire you as you're navigating through your life and with your relationship with Yahweh. And we are very excited and proud to announce that we have reached 100 episodes.
Yay!
100 episodes. And
You
as
gotta
you can
like
see,
play like a sound like dur, dur, dur.
exactly. Yeah, I scraped Rachel off of the covers for this one. She's here. We got her.
Yes, I'm back for episode 100.
She's back for episode 100. Yeah, life's been a little busy for you, eh?
Yeah, it's been
Having
crazy.
how's three boys? Three boys is one more than two.
Yeah, no, it's nuts, but it's good. It's summertime is it's weird because we do, even though we homeschool, we take off in the summer, but it somehow feels like crazier.
Mhm.
Um, I guess just because I have to find new stuff to fill their time
Yeah.
and also I've been on this kick lately of like no screen.
Yeah.
So like the kids are just always bouncing off the walls. And then, I have how old is Haven now? What is he? 13 months? 14 months?
He's got to be older than
You
that.
guys
Bryn is
have
13 months.
I don't count
He's like
months
15
anymore
months.
until it's like 18 months. I forget the months, but he's over 1
Yeah.
and he is busy and into everything and attached to me by the hip. So I
Attached to you and tubes of toothpaste.
yes, yeah. He loves tubes of toothpaste. He's the weirdest little baby. It's so funny when you have multiple kids, it's not that you compare them, but you're like, oh, my first did that, or the other ones never did this. And he is so different. But I think it's also because he just has a totally different experience because he's like
Yeah.
the little
Third
baby of the
baby.
family.
Hmm.
And we only have, or, there's such a big age gap. Like they really had their experience growing up with together.
Hmm.
And he's got these big brothers, but
Yeah.
it's cute and it's fun. And
It is
so,
so
but
cute to see them growing and the things that they pick up on and are interested in. I always laugh when
yes.
I see pictures and videos of him with his toothpaste tubes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have said, I don't know if you remember this, but when he was like 2 months old, that I felt like he was crazy smart.
Hmm.
And it's it's cool to see their personality start to develop more and more. And as you know, because you have toddlers, like it really kind of blows up once they're over 2, but you get a little picture of things once they're over 1. But he is so smart, like on a level that I've never experienced. Like I feel like he's going to be speaking in sentences soon. He just
Yeah.
started in the past few weeks doing this babbling thing, and you can tell he's doing inflections like it sounds like what he's doing is what we sound like to him because
Hmm.
they can't really speak English yet until
Yeah.
they learn to fully talk. So it's just wild the things that he understands and he already is walking around the house. He finds pens or markers, and then he goes and finds a piece of paper because there's constantly trash all over my house from my older kids. And then he takes the paper, sets it down on the floor in front of him, and starts trying to draw with a pen. And these are the things that I mean when I say, like, I don't remember the older ones ever doing this at 1, like maybe when they were 3.
It is
So,
funny the things that they pick up on. Bryn just today, Brooke had her a hairbrush, and Bryn took the hairbrush and was trying to brush her hair. And I thought that that was so funny that a little baby,
yeah,
she just turned 1, that
yeah.
she would note that that's what the hairbrush is for and to try to brush her hair. They're so cute though.
I know this is one of my favorite ages because you really start seeing them discovering the world
Yeah.
and just things like that that they clearly like made the connection of what something is. And I always, until Haven, the newborn stage was always my favorite. And then he
Until
was
Haven.
the hardest newborn to ever exist. But lately I've really been thinking that I just love this age.
Mhm.
Pretty much before the twos start, like between 1 and 2. It's just they're discovering so many things, and they're kind of getting into tantrums, but not, totally defiant. So it's just really fun, and I love seeing them discover the world.
Definitely. Bryn just started saying yeah and yes.
Ah,
And I love that she's not saying no, that she can
no,
only say
normally it's
yeah.
no that comes first.
So everything is yeah. So I'll say, "Do you want this?" She'll go, "Yeah." It's so cute. I love that she's just saying yeah because Ben, who's 2, he only says no. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding, but mostly and we've always joked that Bryn is gonna talk before him because he doesn't talk that much. He can say a lot of single words, and now he's starting to say more multiple words, but he prefers to not talk. And it's funny that you said what you did about inflections because now he's practicing saying yes, please. When he wants something, I say, you have to say yes, please. And he goes, like he
That's so
doesn't even
cute.
say it sometimes. He could say yes and he could say please, but he'll just go, or
It
I'll say,
reminds me
no, thank you.
it reminds me of that office quote with Kevin when he's like, "Why say lot word when
Yeah,
less word
exactly.
do trick?"
That's exactly Ben in a nutshell. He's like a little caveman. That's what we always say. He'd rather grunt, than actually speak to you, which is hilarious. And he'd rather go, no, than say anything. So we're working on that. We're working on that. It's been challenging around here, but we're getting
Yeah.
there.
Well, not only is every kid different, but it's not even always just about boys and girls, but just that time at 2, like, you and I
Yeah.
talk about off the podcast, 2 is brutal. More often than not. I mean, I think some people have 2-year-olds that, aren't that tough,
Yeah.
but it's just the next stage of them discovering their world. They're now discovering boundaries and what they can push back on, and
Hmm.
it's
It's
just a
funny.
hard time to
It is
parent.
funny how different they all are because Mike and I thought that people were exaggerating about two because Brooke was such a good 2-year-old. She was so good until she got closer to 3. And that's
Yeah,
when it started to come out
I
like the
remember that.
defiance part and not wanting to go to sleep. She stopped
Yeah.
napping, all that kind of stuff. And that's when it started to become a challenge. But we made it through most of 2 before that stuff started to pop up. So
Yeah.
we were like, what are you talking about 2? Where with Ben, it started a lot earlier. It was right when he turned 2. So
Yeah.
it is interesting how different kids are and just how it shows up in different ways.
Yeah.
I think too because he's not as verbal as she was. She was, I mean, full sentences by I mean 18 months or before. I actually went back to watch videos of her at the same age as Ben recently, maybe a month ago because you know how as time goes by, you forget things? And
Yeah.
you and I
Oh,
talk about
yeah.
this all the time with like parents of adult children and how they don't
Yeah.
remember things the same way that they happen.
They only remember the good things.
They only remember the good things. And so I'm like, I want to make sure that what I remember about her is true. So I counted the days of how old Ben is, and then I counted the days of how old Brooke was. And I went back in my phone, and back then I used to take videos every single day.
Yeah.
I found a video from the same day, so she would have been the exact same age. She was sitting at the piano, playing the piano. Now, granted, like she wasn't playing the right keys, but she was
Yeah.
playing the piano and singing a song, like the full song. I think it was Mr. Sun, please shine down on me. And I just was like, this is crazy how different the two kids are. It's not to
Yeah.
say, one is better and whatever. It's just to say they're very different,
Yeah.
where he is much more physical, and to see his mind work is very different than the way that she operates. So just interesting parenting things.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's boys. They
Now, I do want to give our listeners kind of a synopsis of
and
what
I
we
know
want to
people
talk
get
about. Oh, sorry. Of what we want to talk about today. But just for those listening, if this is your first time, this is a fun one because we are actually going to be doing a recap today of all that we've covered on the podcast and just kind of talk a little bit about some of our favorite episodes, what our most popular episodes are, and just give you a breakdown of what we have done. There are so
yeah.
many people that reach out to us because they're like, oh, I heard this episode. This was great. And then we get to talking, and it's like, oh, we have an episode on that. And we have an episode on that. And we have an episode on that.
Yeah.
So if this is your first time, this is actually a good episode to listen to because we're going to break down what we've talked about. And then I want to share at the end what we're going to get into a little bit and kind of where our hearts are on some of the topics that we want to cover coming up that we haven't covered yet. Okay, so question. Which episode, this is a pop quiz, which episode do you think has been the most listened to episode on this podcast? And Rachel does not know the answer to this because
No.
she doesn't have a login to the back end of our podcast, so she wouldn't know the answer.
Yeah.
What is your guess?
Yeah. So I have a pretty good idea. I'm kind of between two,
Okay.
but I'm gonna go with our Dr. Stu episode.
You think that that is the number one most listened to episode?
Yeah, the first Dr. Stu one, because we had two.
Wrong.
Oh, can I have a second guess? I have a second
Second
guess.
guess. Yes.
Okay. My second guess, which it was the first one I thought of, but I really thought that the Dr. Stu one would have been more popular. Second guess is our spiritual warfare episode.
Wrong.
Oh, then I have no idea. I have no more
Our
guesses.
most listened to episode is Injecting Truth, a deep dive into childhood vaccines.
Oh, wow. I
Most listened to episode, 441 downloads.
wow.
Yeah.
That's
Isn't that
cool. That
wild?
that was a great episode.
Number two, most listened to episode, Unveiling the Dark Side of the Vaccine Industry, Ingredients,
Wow.
Health Risk, and Ethical Concerns. Number three is Dr. Stu's episode part one, Understanding Birth with Dr. Stu. So he was in the top three.
Yeah.
Number four, Exposing the Controversial Truths, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. Number five, Intro to Spiritual Warfare,
Oh,
the Holy Spirit and
that
Falling from Faith.
that is honestly surprising to me because I remember those vaccine episodes were one of the ones I was most nervous to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like talking about that a lot on social media. I know you talk about it a lot on social media, and I will sometimes. And there was a point in time where I did, but I would get some pretty tough messages, and I just don't like debating people. But that is a cool thing about being on a podcast, is we can talk about whatever we want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's true.
and you and I aren't here to debate each other.
Yeah.
And we're
We're
gonna
just
talk
sharing
about,
information.
yeah, we're gonna talk about the things from our perspective that we have learned through our life
Mhm.
experience. And we had
Yeah.
great guests on
Yeah.
for
Angela
those.
is awesome.
Yes.
And her handle, by the way, is Injecting Truth is one of her profiles. I will say, and you're right, I do share content about vaccines on the Radiant Mission Instagram page. I get suppressed when I share content from
Yeah.
Angela. When I will share stories and I'll get lots and lots of people that watch my stories. The minute that I share something from her page, which she has hundreds, multiple thousands of followers, like
Yeah.
many followers she has. She might even have 100,000 followers. But for whatever reason, when I share her content, I am suppressed and it's shrunk down. It's like maybe 40 people see it.
Yeah, I noticed that too back when I shared more stuff. It is interesting. I mean, I don't care, but it is also I think it's one of the reasons maybe I'm so surprised that those are our most listened to episodes of the podcast. But that is the thing with having a podcast platform is you can't really be suppressed in the same, at least not yet, hopefully, suppressed in the
Yeah.
same way as social
Yeah.
media. You know, people who are subscribed to our podcast, they can choose to listen to what episodes they want or not. Or I would like to think too that people have been listening into those episodes because they're interested in those
Hmm.
topics. I
Hmm.
know that information that Angela shared is so invaluable. I was looking for stuff like that when I was pregnant with my first, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I just didn't have access to information like that. So that's the really cool thing about being a part of this radiant mission is being able to be a platform for these topics that have come up in our motherhood experience that are hard and that we can just share things that we've learned along the way and you know people can disagree with conclusions we have come to or the information we've shared and that's totally fine. Just don't come to us in our DMs about it.
Angela's other profile, by the way, is faithful underscore free underscore mama MOMMA. For anyone that's looking for her, definitely go follow her and follow her content because she's posting the real stuff. Like she's out here doing the Lord's work. I'm not even
Yeah.
kidding. She's literally posting the truth about ingredients, studies. The stuff that she posts is very important if you are researching anything to do with these jabs. And I have a feeling a lot of the reason why people have listened to those episodes is because she is referring those episodes on her page. She's speaking to it. So maybe someone's listening to this episode today because of Angela's page and they've come here to listen to the show. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
But definitely go listen to those episodes if you haven't, because they're the most listened to, they're the most popular, and there's a reason why. People want to know this information and they want to know more, the truth behind it. And I think a lot of people have also woken up to what is going on in the world since 2020. 2020 has shaken a lot of people awake to
Yeah.
question and to say, what are we really doing to our bodies?
Yeah.
I actually posted a reel recently that said something to the effect of, I want to see this study. Where's this
Yeah.
study? And that's how people are about everything. Like, where's the study? Show me the study. So much so to the point that it just proves that science has become this religion that people follow because they're going to believe a study without looking into who funded that study. Who was
Hmm.
the study funded by? Was it funded by the very pharmaceutical company that's putting out said drug or whatever
Hmm.
the product is? And I mentioned in my caption when I shared that video that y'all have to get the book Merchants of Doubt. It
Hmm.
explains how this works. It makes it easy to understand how we can be so easily duped into things. One of the specifics that it talks about is cigarettes and the cigarette industry, and how when cigarettes came out, they realized, oh my gosh, cigarettes are killing people. And so they funded their own studies to try to show people that, oh no, it's okay. And what they did is created doubt in the minds of their buyers. And all it took was a little bit of doubt to keep them on the market. And that's the same tactic that the pharmaceutical industry uses is if you just create a little bit of doubt, if there's just a little bit of fact check, a little bit of misinformation, that's enough for people to believe that everything is okay. That's
Hmm.
just enough for people to think, hmm, well, this does have monkey kidney cells in it and aborted fetal cells, but those are from aborted babies from like 1965. And it does have the virus in it, but it's dead, right? But so that's okay for us to inject inside of us. You just create a little bit of doubt And that's all it takes for
Mhm.
people to think that things are going to be okay. I'm going to refer back to another episode we did with Dr. Vaughn. We did a whole series. Believe it was about 5 episodes. We'll give
Yeah,
you
those
guys
were
kind of,
great episodes.
yeah, those were great episodes. He talked about a couple of different topics during that series. Let me go to those episodes. But one of the things that he said to me that really stuck out, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't remember his exact words, but he said something to the effect of, do you really think that God created this beautiful earth with he created all the animals and the plants and everything that he created two people, Adam and Eve, and he put them in this beautiful garden. And then he put a man in a lab coat in the corner making vials of vaccines to give to Adam and Eve to keep them alive. Like, come on.
Yeah,
There are trillions of viruses. There's bacteria, fungi, mold. There's all kinds of stuff around us. Yet they make select vaccines. Those are the ones you're going to get shot up with. But what about all the rest of the stuff? So you're just going
right.
to be protected about the things that they want you to be protected from?
When
That
the
in and of itself is a question.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the reality is, and I think this is kind of one of the driving messages of our entire podcast, is God created our bodies
Yes.
to in an amazing way. He created us to heal. He created us to give birth as women and only women. He created us to you
Heal.
know, exactly, to heal and to grow and to be healthy. He created us to be healthy. And that's what our bodies want to do. And of course,
Yep.
because of sin and death being a part of the world, there is going to be sickness and brokenness. And we're going to have that's another message of our podcast that we've shared infertility series, my own infertility journey, nutrition and
Hmm.
health. We've done a lot of really great topics like that. And the message behind it all is like, even in this broken world and these broken bodies, God still has created our bodies in an amazing way to overcome these things.
He has. And we're also not promised anything, right? Like
Right.
we're not
Yeah.
promised life. And
Right.
that's something that I
Well, we
think,
are promised life, eternal life,
oh, life
but we're not.
eternally, but not here on this earth.
Right. We're not promised even a single another day
Yeah.
on this earth in these flesh tents that we're in that
I love
are
when you say that.
sick. I
Flesh
know.
tint.
I know you do. We're decaying. We
Yeah.
are decaying, but we are they our bodies still are capable of so much more without the intervention of pharmaceuticals. And that's why that's been
Absolutely.
a big topic that we've kind of hit here and there, that we've done
Yeah.
episodes on pharmakia. I liked those.
Yeah.
Those were those were cool too.
Because it's really easy to get wrapped up in medicine and the medical world because of what it can offer. It offers this like, oh, I can heal in the sense that I can live longer. I can get, you
Yeah.
know, a heart transplant or a kidney transplant or all of these different things that the medical system offers. It offers the big stuff like that, but then it's also like, oh, well, we can cure your depression and you don't want to have babies, here's a little pill for that. And we get sucked into all of the different modalities of the medical system. And yes, you and I wanted to dig into that to talk about that. And so let me go ahead and give some episode numbers for folks to reference. We mentioned Dr. Vaughn. He did episodes 46 through 49. So he did 5 episodes, or is that 4? Something like that.
Sure.
So he talked about natural medicine and iridology and how to find root cause of your chronic health issues. He talked about partnering with God in our health. He also talked about understanding and how to heal allergies. So
Yeah.
if you have seasonal or food allergies, listen to episode 48 because that episode literally he spells out how to heal allergies and he healed his own allergies. He also recommended a product in that episode that healed my seasonal allergies and I only had to take it for like a couple of days. So definitely listen to that one. Then episode 49 is another like put a pin in it, save it, listen to it forever and ever for anyone who's a mom or wants to not be sick. He talks about the immune system, how to treat a fever, how to treat stomach bugs, and how to just handle it when your kids are sick. And he literally just breaks it all down in that one. So that's definitely one to listen to. Now, I'll go back because we did talk about pharmakia right before that. So in episodes 41, 42, and 43, you and I got into an introduction to pharmakia. We talked about biblical context and the etymology of the word pharmakia in the Bible.
Mhm.
And then in 42, we get more into that, talking about symbolism, mythology, and the Nephilim. And then in 43, Rockefeller and the history of Western medicine. So we really get into the meat of this. And, I kind of share my opinion about how I think that the enemy has infiltrated our medical system. And, again, it's not to say that there are bad actors in the medical system. I have a lot of friends that are nurses and doctors that want to genuinely help people, but the system itself is broken. And
Yeah.
so this is not a knock on anyone who's in healthcare. This is just a like, hey, dig into the roots of this and, get a little bit deeper into how things have changed and how medicine is practiced today and how the system keeps us sick because it keeps you in a cycle. You're a customer and they want to keep you in it. Healing you is not going to be profitable. And
Right.
that's the problem. I actually recently shared a reel that talks about this doctor who was a neurosurgeon and he realized that the medical system wasn't actually healing people and he quit and like went hiking on a mountain and made this video about how the only things that you really need to heal are sunlight, to not have stress, to eat a healthy whole food like real food, from the earth and not
Yeah.
processed food diet. And that was basically it. If
Yeah.
you can do that and get away from the world, then you can heal your body. And he said, when your body heals, it actually heals multiple things at the same time. Like, in doing that, you're healing your kidneys and you're healing your back and you're healing all different parts of your body. But you have to step away from what you're doing. You
Mhm.
can't keep eating Doritos and looking at screens all night and day and never sleeping. Oh, sleep was one of the other things he said. You have to quit that. So you might have to quit and go live on a side of a mountain like this guy in order to do this, but he breaks it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning so folks can kind of get a good idea of where we started. We started this podcast really because of the inspiration that kind of I had my birth with Ben, which was my second child. And there was so much spiritual warfare that went on during that. And also, it was a very redeeming birth for me because I had gotten totally run over by the medical system with the birth of my first.
Mhm.
And that was kind of the biggest, multiple awakenings happening at the same time, right? The medical system, like that veil ripped right open for me. Then the spiritual warfare aspect, like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't realize that I was under attack and things were going on. And so when we first started this, we introed it and we kind of jumped right into spiritual warfare. So episodes three through, man, 3 through 6 are really all about what is spiritual warfare. And we talk about Genesis 6 and the Nephilim and the spiritual realm, how demons can influence us now. We also talk about oppression versus possession and what that means. And then from there, we kind of transitioned into talking about birth and how it is a spiritual experience. And in episodes 8 and 9, I shared my experience about having a C section in the hospital that I didn't need, that I was forced into, and the juxtaposition of going through that to then having a home birth that ended up being totally unassisted, aside from my husband, who we now call midwife Mike, and
Mhm.
our mom was there. And from there, we go into talking about some of your stories. And you had a very similar experience with having hospital births first and C sections. And so we talk about that and your experience having a bicornuate uterus, what you really learned through these processes about bodily autonomy with your second C section. And then we had a really exciting guest on. We had Brittany from the Biblical Birth School on the podcast for episode number 12. And she broke down Genesis 3 for us and the misconceptions when people say things like, birth is a curse and you're cursed to have horrible births and pain in childbirth. She breaks that
Mhm.
down.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out. And then we get into kind of some of these conception stories. Leah, she is shares her very wild but amazing story with trying to conceive. And she has since come out with kind of revealing who she is. And she is from the Instagram page Trusting Birth, which is awesome. And then she also has her own podcast as well. Vienna Glenn is her other profile on Instagram. And I think her podcast is called The Wise Woman Diaries, I believe. And that is in episode 13. And then one of our good friends had an awesome story about struggling to conceive and then not finding out that she was pregnant until she went into labor.
Yeah,
I didn't know I was pregnant.
I was gonna say if I have like to pick one favorite episode that we've done in the past 100, that one might be my favorite episode, is
Well,
having Evan on to talk about just her miracle
yeah.
surprise pregnancy. It just is such a cool story. If you are newer to the podcast and you haven't listened to that one, what is that one titled?
That one is titled, I didn't know I was pregnant until I went into labor.
Yes.
And that's episode 14.
Yes, so that one is really cool. That's a cool story.
Definitely. And then we get into talking about your infertility journey and how you focused on healing and your health and hormones. We talked about miscarriage a little bit. That's comes up in episode 16. And then we get into kind of healing the holistic way as we're starting to talk about some of these issues like infertility and discovering that, there are reasons why we may have things going on with our bodies. And sometimes I do believe that when it comes to children and babies, it is about God's timing. But sometimes we find that there are underlying issues. And so we got into a series. This was kind of our first series that we did on women's health, which we did another series on that later on down the road. But we talked about holistic health and we had our awesome and lovely Paula Carper on
Mhm.
as a guest for 2 episodes to talk about women's health and educate us on hormones and toxic diet culture. And then we had Carrie Flanagan on for 20 and 21. She walked us through how the sun can help us heal and how the sun healed her, which was another awesome one. I love those episodes with her. She's amazing. We got into a couple kind of different episodes as we got towards the end of that year. And then that was when we went into some of our most popular episodes, which is with Dr. Stu. And he is from the Birthing Instincts Instagram and podcast. And he is awesome. He was a OBGYN at a traditional hospital for 13 years before he realized that midwives were having better outcomes than he was. And he was like, what is up with this? And he started learning from midwives, eventually left the medical system to attend home births and train midwives on how to deliver breech babies. Because guess what? Breech is just a variation of normal. And his episodes are awesome. One of the things to go listen to, if this is something of interest to you, is that he addresses husbands. There are a lot of women that I talk to that are like, I want to have a home birth, but my husband is scared. Go listen to Dr. Stu's episodes 26 and 27 because he addresses that and he explains it very well how to kind of talk to husbands about this situation. So then we get into a couple motherhood episodes talking about being a stay-at-home mom, a working mom. We talk about breastfeeding and those struggles and tips on tongue ties, lip ties, and all that good stuff. And then we start to get into some of this biblical stuff because, right, it's always been we're talking about some things that are medical and what we've discovered because what we have really discovered is how good God is. And you share an awesome testimony. Honestly, episodes 32 through, let's see, 38 are really your testimony about kind of coming back to the Lord after, being a Christian as a child and teenager, now being an adult, finding the Lord, discovering the feasts and the reasons why you follow and celebrate the feasts. So, all of those are in that series of episodes. And then we get into biblical prophecy. And that's a really great series that we go through. We also had Jessica Spies on, and she is very educated on biblical prophecy. So those are some good ones. And now we're getting into what we talked about before with pharmakia and kind of going into alternative medicine, but really from a God perspective. Like, how does the Lord want us to heal? What has He given us? Herbal medicine is one of those. We had Courtney on from the Tea House, Soothsayer Tea House, to share more about herbs with us. Then we got into stuff with Dr. Vaughn and we talked about women's health. We got into vaccines. And then we did a really fun series. I don't know if people know about or are as excited as we were about it. We wanted to look at holidays from a biblical perspective. So we dove into Halloween, Easter, and Christmas and kind of just talked about that a little bit. And then came probably the longest mini series that we had that you weren't even in. Because I think this was at the point where you were
This
getting
one I had
close
the
to having a
baby.
baby.
Yeah.
So my husband stepped in to do some episodes on marriage. He and I had gone through a class called Reengage, which you went through as well with your husband. And it was fantastic and really inspired us. So episodes 59 through, this is long, hold on, 59 through 67 are all on marriage, different topics. We talk about intimacy, we talked about understanding yourself, understanding your spouse, resolving conflict, all that good stuff. So, marriage series, if you want to listen to that with your husband or without, great, go for it. And then you and I were super inspired to talk about birth some more because we love birth around here. We have talked about birth multiple times now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
We'll probably talk
60.
about it again.
Oh, yeah, we're going to cycle through this again. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So, episode 68 through, again, let's go through this. This is a lot. I'm going for so long now. 82 are all different birth stories, birth episodes, not even necessarily stories. Some of them are. We had Audrey Ross on. She is amazing. She shares about autonomous birth, and she is a traditional kind of like out of the system midwife who is amazing. And she has super great content on her Instagram page as well. She's a joyful birth. And we talked about healing birth trauma with Diana from Healing Birth. She was the first person I ever shared my birth story with on her podcast. And to have her on here was such a blessing. She was in episode 77 and 76. And yeah, we just really got into it. We talked about your VBAC story with Haven. and
Yeah.
having a natural birth after 2 C-sections, and we talk about my 3rd birth story, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Because we
we're
both
birthing
had
up.
babies last year. And
We
it's
did.
so it's
Yeah,
so fun to hear kind of a recap of all of these as like the different life stages we were in doing
yeah,
this for 2 years now it's been.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's cool.
It really is. And that kind of spawned the next series. So we had a birth series, and then we had a series on God's design for women's health. We had talked about a little bit about women's health prior, and we had also talked about God's design for health, but then we wanted to be more specific and focus on God's design for women's health because you and I had a bone to pick about birth control, first of all. So starting in episodes 83, we talk and give a really honest conversation about hormonal birth control, IUD stories, and then we talked a bit about beyond birth control and kind of what to look for and marketing strategies that are used to convince us that birth control is needed. And kind of unraveling feminism was another one that we jumped into. And we heard a story about Lindsay, who worked at Planned Parenthood and had an experience at Planned Parenthood that totally changed her life. That's episode 88, if you want to check that out. Paula returns to talk with us about women's health again and dive even deeper into whole body nutrition and gut health. And then we talk about a biblical take on body image and self esteem. And my Rogam story is another one that gets shared right at episode 92, which was a long time coming. And then now we're getting into the very last mini series that we had in the podcast before this episode,
Mhm.
which was the hardest one that I have had to record. We have recorded. Well, I should say me because you weren't on these episodes. And if you had been, you would have been in a creek with me. But the episode was on God's goodness and hoping to ignite hope and deepen folks' faith by hearing testimonies. And this series proved to be the most challenging because I personally feel that there was a lot of spiritual warfare because people were sharing testimonies.
Mhm.
Whenever you are going to be sharing your testimony, you have to be so prayerful about that because the enemy will come and try to prevent that from happening. He doesn't want you sharing your testimony about the goodness of God. And
Yeah.
what happened in that series is prime example number one. Every single guest canceled, and most of them did reschedule. But just the point is that every single person got cold feet of some sort or got derailed, including my own husband, who literally got cold feet about it and was like, "Well, what am I going to say? I don't really have a story to share." And I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have a story to share? Of course you do." So it has been an interesting series, and I kind of made a joke that like I was ready to be done with the series because it was just so many technical problems and so many like
Yeah.
things that I'm like, man, I'm ready to go on to something where I can just schedule with Rachel, who we're gonna fight the devil to record.
Yeah, I joked that I was gonna cancel with you right before.
I appreciate that you didn't mess with me either. I was thinking if she messes with me, I'm gonna be so upset. I thought you would. I was
I
expecting you
would
to text me.
never miss episode 100. Who should be here if not me to
Yeah,
celebrate this
milestone.
momentous, yeah, milestone. There you go. 100 episodes is a big deal. It's been a crazy few years. I'm just a lowly co-host, but you work your butt off for this podcast. You, put in countless hours, day and night, whether it's recording with someone to editing. You practically never sleep, especially when you have to edit. So this is a lot of work, and I'm really proud of you for getting to this, this, this point in the podcast. God put it on your heart and you have seen it through, and it's a lot of work. And I just, thank you for dedicating so much of yourself and your time into hearing all of our stories, including mine.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. It definitely, there's been a lot of moments where it's hard. There's been a lot of, I'm in more of a rhythm where I edit on Sunday nights and on Monday nights, I work on the artwork and load everything up and everything. And there have definitely been weeks where I'm like, oh, I have to edit the podcast. And I like have to check myself because why I'm like complaining about it. And it's not that I don't love what I'm doing and love hearing these stories. It's that I have to do something technical, right?
Mhm.
That's what it's
It's
about, is
work,
that
it's hard work.
I have to listen. Which it's good that I'm listening back through, but I listen to every word. And if there are audio issues, I'm editing that and trying to fix whatever has gone awry, which has happened. There have been episodes, I think it might have been Dr. Stu's episode, where I had to manually edit every time like one microphone was too low or something like that. Every single time that happened because of how we record. So it definitely, there have been moments where, I've been like, man, I have to do this work on the editing side. But I know that the Lord is calling me and you, even if you don't know, and I'm just kidding, to do this. And the messages that I get from people on Instagram where they're like,
Yeah.
thank you so much for putting out this episode. Thank you for talking about this. That makes it all worth it. And, our brother actually shared a story with me that there was this guy that was handing out some kind of like pamphlets that were about God and about, becoming a Christian and everything. And he handed them out, never knowing if anyone would ever get anything out of it or ever receive Christ. And he died never knowing never knowing. And so that's the thing that is kind of like, are we okay or am I okay if I never know if anybody gets anything out of this? I have to be okay with that.
Mhm.
And my hope is just that listeners are getting something out of it, are getting encouragement, are getting just a word of, yeah, you know what? This has helped me deepen my faith, or wow, I didn't know that about demons or the
Mhm.
Nephilim, or oh, I didn't know that about birth control, or oh, I didn't know that about birth. Thank you for
Mhm.
putting out 5 million episodes about birth so that I could learn about physiological birth. So, even if no one ever tells me that, I have to just keep going and know that. But if you want to send me a message, please do because it is encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah, it really I've even gotten a few messages too of just people feeling encouraged, and that encourages us to
Mhm.
keep going and to keep talking about these things. Because
Yeah.
you're right, like, sometimes it could feel like speaking into the vacuum of the podcast world. There's a million podcasts out there,
Mhm.
but people are listening. And if even one person gets something out of anything that we talk about, that is so worth it because we're
Yeah.
not just talking to each other, we're talking to you, whoever is listening.
Yeah. I mean, it's good that
We
we get to
do
talk
it
to
for
each other
you.
too, but
We're
yeah,
going to
that's
talk to
true.
each other anyway.
I know.
I don't
That's
know if
actually one of the reasons why this started
that's what I was
too.
about to say. I don't know if you remember. I'll never forget. I was in a laundromat for the first time in my life because my washer machine broke and I had to do laundry. And I talked to you the whole 3 hours I was at this laundromat. And I think I was talking about Nephilim stuff. And you were like, we should start recording the conversations that we have with each other because I feel like people would be so fascinated by this stuff. Other people have to think about this stuff too.
Yeah.
And then you went on to have your experience giving birth with Ben and all that. And I think that kind of is like the birth of the Radiant Mission podcast is
Yeah.
you and I talking to each other our entire lives.
Gabbing our lives away and then getting totally off track and derailed. So hopefully people like our off the track banter. But
Yeah.
speaking of the podcast and where we've been, I want to talk a little bit about where we're going too. because I know that this has been on my heart to get back to talking about biblical topics, but something in particular really has stuck out to me lately. And it's been related to a lot of what I'm seeing about deconstruction and people going through this, deconstruction
Yeah.
process with their faith. And also people that are saying, like, I follow Jesus or Yeshua, but I don't follow the Bible. And I want to talk about those topics and why the Bible is an important part of Yeshua and
Mhm.
why it's an important part of Yahweh. And just get back to some of the roots of what this podcast is about. Obviously, we talk about a lot of different topics, but I want to talk about the Bible and I want to talk
Yeah.
about why people are running away from church and quote religion and what we can do as followers of Yahweh to help and encourage our friends around us that may be experiencing that. Or if it's you listening and you've gone through something similar where you're like, I love Jesus, but I don't know about this Bible that's written by man.
Mhm.
We'll talk about that in future episodes and start to dig a little bit more into theology and man, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Revelation because we're living in it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited for Bible stuff coming up. That's always got me worked up. I love
Yeah.
talking about the Bible. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think we also are going to possibly, once we get our stuff together about it, talk about music
Oh,
and
yeah, and frequencies.
frequencies. Exactly. Yes. That's
Yes.
gonna take a lot of planning because that's a bigger topic than people realize, but it's very
Mhm.
interesting. And I remember having people mentioning us talking about that when we started this. So that's like 2
Mhm.
years in the
Yeah.
making. And so
Yes.
yeah, that'll and we're going to talk about homeschooling.
Yes.
So maybe we do
Yeah.
a series on homeschooling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Maybe we do.
we
We
got
got
a lot
places to
of
go.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, anything else you want to recap in our recap episode?
I mean, I think you really got it all in there. It's
99
been
episodes.
yeah, it's been a really cool experience being a part of this.
Well, thank you for doing it with me.
Yeah, thank you for asking me.
In a
I'm the
laundromat. Well, no, not in a laundromat, but
Yeah,
seats.
that was later. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a really, really cool experience. And I also just want to, any of our guests who have been on the podcast, if they listen to like thank every one of you because you are
Yeah.
all a part of this podcast as well. Like having every single person's perspective, whether it's sharing a testimony, an experience, or just the excerpts that we've had on sharing knowledge and wisdom, like they're who make the podcast too. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
physically make it because you're the one who does all the work. But like hearing you share all 99 episodes and places we've been, it's so cool to hear all the topics that we've covered. And it's because of the guests that we've had that we've been able to talk about all those topics. Because you and I can only have gab sessions about this stuff for so long. So it's
Absolutely.
all of our guests who've made it. And so thank you to everyone who's been on.
Yes. Thank you to all of our guests, past and future. We're looking forward to it. And man, I think this is the year that we're going to keep growing too. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, give us a shout because we're ready. We're ready to keep growing and keep
Yeah.
doing this. And all for the glory of God, right? All
Yeah.
for his kingdom and talking about how good God is. And we're excited to keep that going.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All
Yeah.
right. So thank you all for listening today. Hopefully, you learned a little nugget about something we talked about that maybe you haven't heard if you don't listen to every episode. And you can go back and listen. Of course, I always tell people, though, to start at the beginning because it grows and develops and stuff. But,
Yeah.
you know, you may just want to one off here and there. So,
Yeah.
And yeah, follow us outside of the podcast on social media, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at The Radiant Mission. And today I'm going to close with Matthew 28:19-20. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. We are wishing you a radiant week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for listening.